What would you do if you suddenly lost everything? And even worse, what if no one stood by your side? The lights dimmed, the audience grew silent, and the stage shimmered under the soft glow of the chandeliers. It was a grand evening, the kind of event where the world's most famous came to witness a new performance, a breakthrough. The famous pianist, Maria Villanova, a woman known not only for her breathtaking talent but also for her sharp tongue and fiery temper, had just finished her latest piece. The applause was thunderous, echoing through the ornate hall. But it was her words that reverberated even more strongly. She was addressing the crowd, and then, almost as an afterthought, she spoke of Elon Musk, the visionary tech mogul who had revolutionized industries. In a moment of playful sarcasm, she said, "And don't get me started on Elon Musk. The man's a genius, but does he even know the difference between a piano and a spaceship? Maybe if he spent less time on Mars and more time in a music hall, the world would be a better place." The crowd chuckled, but the comment hit harder than anyone expected. Maria had just openly mocked one of the most influential men in the world. It wasn't the first time she'd stirred the pot, but this time, it felt different. Her words were sharp, laced with more than just humor. They carried a sense of superiority, as though she was daring anyone to challenge her. The media picked up on it almost immediately. Social media exploded. Hashtags like #Musk vs Maria trended worldwide within hours. Some found Maria's comments amusing and even empowering, while others were shocked by her audacity. But for Elon Musk, the tech genius who had built SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink, this was no laughing matter. He wasn't a stranger to controversy, but this was a challenge he didn't expect, nor one he took lightly. In the midst of all this, Musk remained silent. The silence itself was deafening. The world waited for his response, for the Elon Musk that had become known for his bold tweets and unexpected moves. Would he ignore it? Or would he retaliate? And most importantly, what did it mean for him when someone as renowned and admired as Maria Villanova publicly mocked him? It had been a long, exhausting day for Elon. As he sat in his private office at SpaceX, he stared at the screen in front of him, replaying the interview where Maria had made her remarks. The comment had stung, more than he cared to admit. It wasn't just the mocking nature of her words, but the insinuation that he didn't understand something as delicate and complex as music. Elon had never really been someone to engage in petty feuds. He had bigger things on his mind, launching rockets, revolutionizing energy, building the future. But Maria Villanova was no ordinary person. She was a legend in her own right, an artist who had captured the hearts and minds of millions with her piano. Her mastery of music was undeniable, and so was her sharp wit. Still, he couldn't help but feel a little irritated. After all, he'd worked hard for everything he had. The idea that someone would dismiss him so casually, especially someone who didn't truly know him, made him feel misunderstood. And worse, it made him feel small. In all his years, Elon had faced challenges from competitors, from critics, even from the media, but this was different. Maria Villanova, on the other hand, was basking in the glow of her latest performance. The world knew her for her incredible skill on the piano, but what most didn't know was the fire that burned within her. Maria had been raised in the world of classical music, pushed to perfection from a young age by a mother who had been both a mentor and a tyrant. Her path was paved in discipline, with every step calculated, every note meticulously planned. But Maria wasn't content to merely be a pianist. She wanted to be seen as something more, a symbol of what it meant to challenge expectations. Her comment about Elon Musk was no accident. She had been toying with the idea for weeks, curious to see if anyone would dare to question the world's most influential tech mogul. To her, Musk represented something she despised, a man who had risen to power not through art, not through creativity, but through the world of technology and business. A man who, to her eyes, had never truly grappled with the purity of music, with the soul of the arts. And yet, there was a part of her that admired him. His mind, his brilliance, the way he saw the world in ways that others couldn't. But that wasn't the image the world had of him. The world saw him as a tech mogul, a billionaire who created cars that could drive themselves, rockets that could land, and companies that were changing the way humanity lived. No one saw him as a person. No one saw the heart behind the mind. The world was watching as the next few days unfolded. Maria's comments sparked a firestorm, and Elon's silence only made it burn brighter. As the debate raged on social media, something began to stir within Elon. He'd always been someone who thrived on challenges, who sought to push boundaries. And now, this was his challenge, not to prove he could outwit Maria with words, but to show the world something that no one had ever expected. And so, Elon made a decision. He would attend the next performance Maria was giving, not as a bystander, not as someone who would sit quietly in the back row, but as someone who would take the stage, not with a rocket or a Tesla, but with something completely unexpected. It wasn't just about defending himself. It was about showing Maria, and the world, that there was more to him than just tech and business. There was a side to Elon Musk that no one knew about, a side that would leave the world in awe. The next chapter in this story was about to unfold, and it was one that no one could have predicted. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? As the world waited, the stage was set. Elon Musk wasn't just a name you saw in the headlines, it was a symbol of audacity, brilliance, and relentless pursuit of the future. But beyond the headlines, behind the electric cars and rockets, there was a person shaped by the trials of his past, someone who had risen not only because of his mind, but also because of the experiences that had defined him. Growing up in South Africa, Elon had faced many struggles, both personal and academic. His childhood had been anything but easy. He was an awkward, introverted kid, often finding solace in books rather than in friendships. His parents were separated, and his relationship with his father was particularly strained. Elon's father, Errol, had a sharp mind but was a difficult man, critical and distant. Elon's mother, May, was a dietitian and a model, who, despite her success, had her own battles to fight in a world that often underestimated her. She was the one person in Elon's life who consistently encouraged him to think big and reach for the stars. Elon had always been fascinated with the idea of technology. But what set him apart from the other kids was his obsession with solving problems. By the age of 12, Elon had already taught himself computer programming and created a video game, Blaster, which he sold for a few $100s. It wasn't much, but it planted a seed in him, the realization that he had the power to create something new, something that could change the world. However, this brilliance was often misunderstood by others. Throughout his childhood and teenage years, Elon found it hard to connect with his peers. He was bullied for his awkwardness, his love for learning, and his unshakable determination to focus on things that didn't seem cool. His love for technology was met with mockery. But he kept going, motivated by a vision that no one around him could understand, a vision of a world where humans weren't just confined to Earth, but could reach for the stars. When he moved to Canada at the age of 17, and then later to the US to attend the University of Pennsylvania, Elon was still that same determined, slightly out-of-place young man. He was driven, yes, but there were cracks in his armor. His early years in business were riddled with failures. In the mid-90s, he co-founded Zip2, a company that provided city guides for newspapers. It was sold for nearly $300 million, but the experience wasn't as fulfilling as he'd hoped. The next venture, X.com, would later become PayPal, and it was here that Elon would face another crucial turning point in his life. He was ousted from the company he had founded, which was a crushing blow to his ego. The pain of that rejection became a defining moment for Elon. Many people might have taken that failure as an indication to quit. But not Elon Musk. Instead, it ignited a fire within him. If the world didn't believe in him, he would prove them wrong. He would go on to launch SpaceX, Tesla, and Neuralink. Companies that would fundamentally change the industries they entered. Yet, the journey was never easy. Throughout his career, Elon had faced enormous obstacles, many of which were not public knowledge. From near bankruptcy at Tesla to the life-threatening pressure of launching SpaceX, Elon had pushed through it all. His resilience became his greatest strength. But underneath the boldness, the ambition, and the success, there was always a quiet part of him that wondered if anyone would ever truly understand him. Maria Villanova, by contrast, had always been surrounded by people who understood her, at least, in the world of music. Maria was a pianist who was born into a family of musicians. Her mother, a former opera singer, pushed her from a young age to pursue a career in music. There was no time for weakness in Maria's life. Every note was expected to be played perfectly, every performance had to be flawless. But there was an underlying tension in her relationship with her mother, who pushed Maria to succeed at any cost. From a young age, Maria had exhibited extraordinary talent. By the age of 6, she could already play Beethoven sonatas with precision, and by 14, she was a prodigy, a rising star in the classical music world. But what the world didn't see was the cost of that success. Maria's mother had always been demanding, and their relationship became strained as Maria grew older. She felt suffocated, as though her identity was being shaped by expectations that didn't align with her own passions. Despite her growing success as a pianist, Maria struggled with finding her own voice. She was often caught between what her mother wanted her to be and what she wanted for herself. The pressure to constantly perform at the highest level left her exhausted, both mentally and physically. Music, once her sanctuary, became something she resented. The weight of perfectionism weighed heavily on her. At the same time, Maria was a fiercely independent woman, unwilling to compromise on her artistry. She wanted to be known not just for her skill, but for her ability to break boundaries. And that's where her disdain for people like Elon Musk came in. To Maria, Musk represented everything she felt was wrong with the world, people who didn't truly understand the depth of art, who didn't have the patience or the sensitivity to appreciate what she considered the highest form of expression. Her comment about Musk, while public, had been a long time coming. Maria felt the need to challenge someone like him, someone whose world seemed so far removed from hers. She didn't see Musk as a visionary, she saw him as an arrogant billionaire who thought he could solve every problem with technology. He was everything she didn't stand for. But there was more to the story than just music and technology. Maria had her own battles with insecurity, loneliness, and self-doubt. Underneath her tough exterior and sharp wit was a woman who longed for a deeper connection with others. She found herself, more often than not, pushing people away. Her fame and talent created a barrier that was hard to break, leaving her isolated in a world that demanded perfection. As both Maria and Elon moved through their respective worlds, neither had any idea that their paths would soon cross in a way neither of them could have predicted. Elon, with his relentless drive and curiosity, had been preparing for a new kind of challenge, one that wasn't about rockets or electric cars. And Maria, with her sharp tongue and unyielding passion for music, was about to meet a man who would show her a side of the world she never thought existed. Their story was only just beginning, and no one could have foreseen what would come next. The world's reaction to Maria Villanova's mockery of Elon Musk was swift and overwhelming. Social media buzzed with thousands of memes, hashtags, and debates. Maria, already a star in the classical music world, suddenly became a polarizing figure. Some admired her boldness, calling her the voice of artistic rebellion against a corporate-driven world. Others, however, felt that her words were an attack on creativity and innovation, and on someone who had given so much to humanity. And in the midst of it all, Elon Musk stayed quiet, letting the storm swirl around him. It was that silence that turned the spotlight on him. People weren't just talking about Maria's words anymore, they were waiting for Elon to respond. They were waiting for the great mind of our time, the man who had taken humanity to space and transformed the automotive industry, to do something, anything, in retaliation. But Elon Musk wasn't just sitting idly by. He was formulating his plan, carefully considering how he would respond to Maria's challenge. As always, he was thinking outside the box, not looking to match her wit with a simple retort or sharp comment, but to do something that would leave the world in awe. Maria, on the other hand, was basking in the aftermath. For her, the comment had been nothing more than a throwaway remark, a bit of theater to entertain the public. She didn't expect it to explode into the global conversation that it did. But the attention, the media interviews, the constant mentions in the news, had a strange effect on her. It fed her ego, and in some strange way, it made her feel powerful. Despite the growing pressure from the media to continue her war of words with Musk, Maria wasn't one to back down. If anything, she was more determined than ever to make her point. She was convinced that people like Musk, who lived in the world of technology and business, would never understand the emotional depth that artists like her brought to the world. Her music, her passion, her drive to perfect every note, those were things that could never be quantified by technology. But what Maria didn't expect was that Elon Musk's silence would soon turn into action. Musk was planning something that would not only change the narrative, but would force her to reckon with the very thing she had mocked, a world where technology and art could collide in a way no one had ever imagined. It was a quiet afternoon when Elon's assistant, Lauren, delivered a message to Maria's agent. Elon had a proposal. He wanted to challenge Maria Villanova to a piano duel. At first, the idea seemed absurd. A duel between a tech mogul and a world-renowned pianist. But it wasn't as crazy as it sounded. Elon had an idea, a vision that could change everything. He wasn't going to simply meet Maria in the realm of music. He was going to take her to his domain, where technology and art coexisted in perfect harmony. He would play the piano, but with a twist. Maria's agent forwarded the message to her, and Maria laughed when she first read it. A piano duel? Elon Musk, of all people, wants to challenge me? She scoffed, the notion almost laughable. But then, as she thought more about it, a feeling of irritation bubbled inside her. How dare he try to take her on in her own domain? Was he so arrogant that he believed he could simply step into the world of music and compete with her? Maria had built her entire career on years of practice, devotion, and the kind of emotional understanding of music that only a few could claim. For someone like Musk, who dealt with calculations and numbers, to think he could just walk in and play music the way she did was not only insulting, it was offensive. And yet, a small part of Maria found herself intrigued. What if this was the ultimate test? What if Musk's challenge was an opportunity to prove, once and for all, that art could not be quantified or overshadowed by the advances of technology? If he wanted a duel, she would give him one, but on her terms. She wasn't going to back down from this challenge. The news of the piano duel quickly made headlines. The world, it seemed, was split into two camps. Some saw it as an opportunity for Musk to prove that even the most unexpected challengers could thrive in the arts, while others saw it as Maria's chance to shut down a man who represented everything they felt was wrong with the modern world. On social media, the tension was palpable. Hashtags like #TechVersusArt, #PianoDuel, and #Musk vs Maria flooded timelines, as fans of both figures rallied behind their champions. The debate was fierce. Could a tech mogul like Musk truly have the skill and understanding of music to compete with a virtuoso like Maria? Or was this simply an attempt by Musk to challenge the very foundations of artistry itself? But no matter how many tweets, articles, or debates surfaced, one thing was clear: this was no ordinary battle. It wasn't just about playing the piano. It wasn't about who could hit the right notes or who had the most technical skill. The duel had become a symbol of something deeper, the intersection of two worlds that rarely, if ever, collided. Technology and art. Maria spent the days leading up to the duel practicing for hours in her studio. She wasn't just practicing the notes, she was preparing herself for the battle that was about to take place, the battle for her reputation, her passion, and her pride. She knew the world was watching, and she wasn't about to let a tech billionaire waltz into her world and take the stage from her. For Elon, the stakes were just as high, though his approach was different. He wasn't afraid of being seen as an outsider in the music world. He was used to defying expectations, to doing the impossible. But this was a different kind of challenge. It wasn't about building rockets or electric cars. This was personal. For the first time in his life, Elon Musk was stepping into a world that wasn't his, and he was determined to show the world that he could succeed in it. The stage was set, and the world was waiting. In just a few days, Elon Musk and Maria Villanova would face off in what was sure to be the most unexpected and talked about event of the year. Neither of them knew exactly what to expect from the other, but one thing was certain: this wouldn't be a typical performance. It would be a battle of not just skill, but of ideology, passion, and the very definition of what it meant to be a creator in today's world. And so, the world held its breath, waiting for the moment when two icons, one of technology, the other of art, would come together in a clash that no one could have predicted. The stage was set. A grand concert hall in New York City had been chosen for the event, an iconic venue that was both a symbol of tradition and prestige in the world of music. The location was perfect. The venue was renowned for its acoustics, steeped in history, and witnessed the performances of countless legends. This would not just be a duel between two individuals, it would be a battle of worlds. For Maria Villanova, the pressure was palpable. Her practice sessions had been intense, but she found herself distracted. It wasn't just about the music anymore. It was about proving something much deeper, something more personal. Maria had always believed that the art of music, with its emotion, its history, its raw beauty, could never be understood or replicated by the realm of technology. But now, here she was, on the cusp of a confrontation with a man who, in her eyes, embodied everything she despised about the intrusion of machines into human creativity. Musk's challenge felt like an assault on her world, her life's work, her soul. In the days leading up to the event, Maria couldn't shake the feeling that she was being drawn into something bigger than just a performance. There was a fear, yes, but there was also a spark of defiance. This was a fight for her identity. The world expected her to crush Musk and prove that the arts could never be overtaken by technology. She couldn't afford to fail. The pressure only made her more focused, more determined to dominate the stage. This was her domain, her territory. Elon, on the other hand, seemed to revel in the challenge. While others fretted and speculated, he was calm. Too calm, perhaps. The media had hyped up the duel as a clash of egos, a contest of pride and ambition. But for Musk, this wasn't about showing off. This wasn't about competing for accolades or public approval. This was about something more fundamental, the question of whether the arts and technology could ever coexist, whether they were truly as different as people like Maria believed. Elon's approach to music had always been unconventional. While he wasn't trained in classical music like Maria, he had an intrinsic understanding of rhythm and pattern, something that had served him well in his work with rockets and electric cars. Elon was no stranger to learning new things, and his curiosity had led him to explore music in his own way. He spent hours watching YouTube tutorials, experimenting with sounds, and getting advice from musicians who were willing to help him learn. He wasn't trying to become a virtuoso, he simply wanted to understand the essence of music, the emotional connection that Maria seemed to value so highly. But as the days drew closer to the performance, Elon's mind started to shift. His assistants had warned him about the immense pressure. The media was already running headlines predicting his failure, and the public seemed to expect him to fall flat. But that didn't faze Elon. He had faced far worse challenges. He had launched rockets that exploded before making it to space, built a car company that was teetering on the brink of bankruptcy, and revolutionized entire industries. If he could face the fear of failure in those endeavors, why should a piano duel be any different? The night of the duel arrived, and the atmosphere inside the concert hall was electric with anticipation. The crowd had gathered, a mix of media, celebrities, tech enthusiasts, and music lovers, all eager to witness what would undoubtedly be a spectacle. Maria arrived first, walking confidently onto the stage in a flowing gown that highlighted her poise and grace. She was a woman accustomed to the spotlight, and tonight, she seemed every bit the seasoned professional. The crowd greeted her with applause as she took her seat at the grand piano. She adjusted the bench, took a deep breath, and closed her eyes for a moment, preparing herself mentally for the challenge ahead. Elon arrived shortly after, dressed in a simple suit that contrasted with the more glamorous surroundings. As he made his way to the piano, the murmurs in the audience grew louder. Some people were skeptical, others curious. But no one expected the quiet billionaire tech mogul to bring anything other than the unexpected. His confidence wasn't brash, but it was undeniable. Elon took his seat at the piano with a calm that almost seemed out of place in such a high-pressure situation. The duel would begin in a way that few had anticipated. There would be no grand orchestral pieces, no extravagant showmanship. Both participants would simply play a single song, a song that had been chosen by neither of them, but one that would challenge both of their skills in unexpected ways. The piece was a modern composition that combined classical elements with electronic beats. It was a fusion of art and technology, a song that seemed to embody the very essence of what they were about to undertake. The audience fell silent as the first notes of the music filled the hall. Maria's hands moved with grace, her fingers dancing over the keys. The classical training she had spent her life perfecting flowed effortlessly from her fingertips. The music swirled through the air, each note carrying the weight of her experience, her years of sacrifice, and her deep connection to the art. But as the music progressed, Elon's turn was approaching. It was time to step into the unknown. Elon's fingers hovered over the keys as he began to play. The first few notes were tentative, but with each passing second, he found a rhythm. The music, although far from perfect, was full of unexpected complexity. He had spent countless hours practicing, learning not only how to play but how to feel the music. As the song continued, Elon infused it with an energy that was uniquely his own. There was an underlying pulse to his performance. Not just the technical aspects of the music, but an undeniable drive, a force of will. His mind was synchronized with the piano, his movements fluid and rhythmic. This wasn't just about playing notes, it was about creating something new. As the song drew to a close, the room was filled with a tension that could be felt in every corner of the hall. The music hung in the air, the energy palpable. Elon's performance had surprised the audience. It wasn't perfect, but there was something powerful in it, something raw and real. Maria, too, had finished her performance. The crowd erupted in applause. The duel was over, but the real challenge had only just begun. The question that hung in the air was no longer about who had won. It was about what came next. For Maria, it was clear, this wasn't just about the piano anymore. This was about what each of them represented. She had expected to humiliate Elon, to show that her world of emotion and artistry was beyond the reach of technology. But something had shifted in the room. Elon had brought something to the table that wasn't just about playing notes. It was something deeper, something that transcended the boundaries of music. And for Elon, the duel was more than just proving a point. It had become a journey of discovery. He hadn't come here to beat Maria. He had come to understand. To feel. To show the world that technology and art could coexist in ways that no one had ever imagined. And now, they both found themselves standing on the edge of something they hadn't anticipated, a new understanding of each other, and of the world they both inhabited. The duel was over. But the real conversation was just beginning. The night of the piano duel was meant to be an event that captured the world's attention, and it did. But what no one expected was that the emotional weight of the performance would be just as powerful as the music itself. For both Maria and Elon, this wasn't simply a challenge of technical skill, it was a personal journey, one that would shake their beliefs and push them into uncharted territory. As the last note of Elon's performance echoed through the concert hall, the audience fell into a stunned silence. Maria, who had expected to feel triumphant, found herself caught off guard by the power of his unexpected style. She had always prided herself on her ability to evoke deep emotion with her music, to make every note carry a piece of her soul. But there was something about Elon's performance that was raw, untamed, and, in its own way, just as emotional. It wasn't perfect, but it was genuine. The silence in the room was broken by a slow, reluctant round of applause. It wasn't the kind of applause you would expect for a flawless performance. Instead, it felt like a moment of collective realization. The audience wasn't applauding technical perfection, but the courage it took for Elon to step into a world he had no right to claim and pour his heart into it. It was the kind of applause that came from witnessing something that transcended expectation, something that left you questioning your assumptions. Maria stood at the piano, her hands still resting on the keys. She had played her heart out, every piece of her soul was woven into the music she had just performed. But now, as the applause died down, she found herself struggling with a feeling she hadn't anticipated: doubt. Doubt about her previous beliefs. Doubt about the world she had dedicated herself to. Could she, an artist of decades of experience, truly say that art could not be enhanced by technology? Could she deny that Elon's raw, honest performance had resonated with the audience in a way that her carefully crafted perfection could not? Her heart raced, and for the first time in a long time, Maria felt vulnerable. In a career filled with accolades and respect, she had never before faced an emotional challenge like this. She had always believed that her artistry was the purest form of expression, but here was a man who had only just begun to touch the piano, and yet, in his simplicity, he had shaken her confidence to its core. As the final applause faded, Maria stepped away from the piano and glanced at Elon. He stood there, looking slightly awkward but undeniably content with his performance. For a brief moment, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Elon didn't say a word, but his expression was one of quiet understanding. It was as if he knew that the real challenge wasn't the performance itself, but the understanding they had both gained in the process. Maria, still reeling from the unexpected turn of events, took a deep breath. She had spent so many years crafting the perfect, emotional performance. But now, she realized that perhaps there was more to music, and to life, than perfection. Perfection could be isolating, a pursuit that led to the constant fear of failure. But Elon, in his rawness and vulnerability, had shown her something she hadn't considered before: the power of embracing imperfection. The crowd was buzzing, eager to hear the next part of the performance, the next phase of this public spectacle. But Maria, for the first time in a long time, felt an overwhelming need to speak. The weight of the emotions she had been suppressing for years came flooding to the surface, and in a spontaneous moment of clarity, she stood up and walked to the center of the stage, facing the audience. She began, her voice faltering for a moment, "I came here tonight thinking that this was about winning. About proving that the arts, the way I've always known them, are superior to technology. I thought I was going to show the world that music, art, emotion, these things are pure and cannot be replaced." She paused, taking a deep breath, her eyes scanning the audience. "But tonight, I've realized something. Music is not about perfection. It's not about showing the world how flawless you are. It's about the connection. It's about the feeling. And, in that sense, what Elon just showed us, that raw energy, that vulnerability, that's as much a part of art as anything I've ever created." The crowd was silent. For a moment, it felt like time had stopped. Maria's words had struck a chord deep within the audience. They had come to see a spectacle, a competition between two opposing worlds, but now they were witnessing something much more profound, a moment of self-realization. Elon, standing at the piano, watched Maria closely. His lips curled into a slight smile, the first genuine smile he had shown all evening. This wasn't about beating her. This wasn't about proving anything. It was about breaking down the walls between the world of technology and the world of art. It was about showing that the two could coexist in a way that was beautiful, vulnerable, and real. Maria turned to him, and for the first time, they both truly saw each other. She saw beyond the tech mogul, beyond the business tycoon who had revolutionized industries. She saw a man who, despite his wealth and success, had the courage to step into a world he knew nothing about and to give it everything he had. And Elon saw in her the dedication, the sacrifice, and the passion that made her the artist she was. For a moment, there was no competition between them, no animosity. There was just mutual respect. "I think we've both learned something tonight," Elon said, his voice calm but full of conviction. "Art and technology aren't enemies. They can exist together, even help each other grow. Maybe that's the future." Maria nodded slowly. "Maybe it is," she agreed. As the audience erupted into applause once again, it wasn't just for the performances they had seen, but for the transformation that had taken place before their very eyes. The duel had turned into something more, a lesson in humility, in growth, and in the power of collaboration. Maria had entered the competition hoping to prove a point. But in the end, she had discovered something far more important: the beauty of imperfection, the power of vulnerability, and the realization that art and technology could, in fact, be one. For both of them, this wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The weeks following the piano duel were nothing short of a whirlwind. Headlines flooded the media, each more sensational than the last. Elon Musk's unexpected piano performance shakes the world of classical music. Maria Villanova's humble realization: can art and technology coexist? Social media buzzed with discussions, opinions, and endless debates. What had started as a challenge between a tech mogul and a renowned pianist had blossomed into a global conversation about the intersection of art, technology, and human emotion. But for Maria and Elon, the aftermath was far more introspective. Both had come to terms with something much deeper than the performance itself. The night of the duel had left a mark on both of them, forcing them to reevaluate their beliefs, their passions, and their futures. Maria found herself in a quiet cafe in Paris, far from the chaos of New York City and the expectations that followed her every move. She had always loved this city, its artistic heritage, its romance, its history. It was here, in the city of artists and philosophers, that she found the space she needed to breathe. But even here, in the quiet streets lined with cobblestones, her mind kept returning to that moment on stage, when she had stood before the audience and spoken words that felt like a weight lifting off her shoulders. For years, Maria had held steadfast to the belief that true artistry came from within, that it was something pure, something that could not be replicated or replaced by machines. She had built her career on that belief, and it had served her well. But now, after the duel with Elon, she wasn't so sure anymore. Her performance that night had been everything she had ever worked for. Yet, despite its perfection, it hadn't moved the audience in the way she had hoped. Elon's raw, unpolished music, on the other hand, had struck a chord that went deeper than anything she could have predicted. It had reminded her of something she had forgotten over the years: the importance of emotion in art. Music wasn't just about technical precision. It was about feeling, about connecting with others in a way that was universal, no matter the medium. Her relationship with music was changing. It was no longer just a tool for personal validation, it had become a conversation, a way to explore the world, to ask questions, to evolve. She didn't need to be perfect. She needed to be honest, open to change, and ready to embrace the unexpected. One evening, as she sat in the cafe, a message popped up on her phone. It was from Elon. "Hey Maria, I was thinking of something. What if we tried collaborating? A fusion of technology and art. Not a competition, but a creative project where we push the boundaries of what's possible. Let me know what you think." Maria read the message twice. The idea felt both thrilling and terrifying. Collaborating with Elon Musk, the man who had once been her adversary, felt like an odd twist of fate. But maybe that was exactly what she needed. Maybe the future of music, and of art itself, didn't have to be about drawing lines in the sand. Maybe it was about blending the worlds of technology and tradition, finding common ground, and creating something entirely new. She typed a quick response. "I'd love to discuss it. I think we could create something really special. Let's talk more soon." And just like that, the seed of a new beginning was planted. Meanwhile, Elon was in his office at SpaceX, staring out at the horizon, lost in thought. The duel had been an unexpected chapter in his life, and it had left a lasting impression. He had never expected to be involved in something so personal, so deeply emotional. Music was never his domain. He had always been more focused on building rockets, changing the future of energy, and exploring the possibilities of space. But after that night in New York, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more he could do with technology. Something that could change the way people experienced art. His mind kept returning to Maria's words. She had said something that stuck with him: "It's not about perfection. It's about the connection." Those words resonated with him deeply. In many ways, his entire career had been about creating connections between people and new technologies, between ideas and reality. What if he could help create a new form of art that wasn't constrained by the past? What if technology could open doors to new ways of experiencing music, something more immersive, more accessible, and more dynamic? Elon had a habit of diving headfirst into new ideas, and this was no exception. He began reaching out to some of the brightest minds in both the tech and music worlds, asking them to think outside the box. What would it look like if artificial intelligence could collaborate with a human composer, creating something that no one had ever heard before? What if there were no limits to the instruments, sounds, or environments that could be used in a performance? And then, there was the possibility of working with Maria. He had seen the way her music had moved people. But he also recognized the growth she had undergone that night. Her willingness to embrace imperfection, her recognition that music was about more than just technical skill, it was about soul. Together, they could explore the future of music in a way that neither could have imagined on their own. Elon sent a message to Maria that night, the seed of a collaboration that would push both their boundaries. The day they met to discuss their project was filled with anticipation. Maria was nervous, though she tried not to show it. What had once seemed like a competition had now turned into an opportunity to explore new frontiers, a chance to blend her classical expertise with Elon's vision of technology's potential in art. The project would be unlike anything either of them had done before, a fusion of organic emotion and cutting-edge technology. They sat in a quiet, private space, sipping coffee and discussing the possibilities. Elon outlined his vision, an interactive musical experience that used AI, virtual reality, and real-time data to create a truly unique concert, where the audience could influence the music as it was being performed. Maria, though hesitant at first, began to see the beauty in the idea. It wasn't about replacing the soul of music, but about enhancing it, allowing people to connect with the art in a new way. It felt, in that moment, like the beginning of something important, a project that could change the way people viewed both technology and art. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship, one that would challenge them both in ways they couldn't yet understand. As the conversation continued, Maria realized that the lessons she had learned during their duel were not just about music. They were about life. About letting go of old beliefs, embracing the unknown, and being open to collaboration, even with someone who seemed so different from her. The journey that had begun with competition had now led to collaboration. And this, Maria realized, was the true power of art, the ability to bring people together, to challenge each other, to create something that transcended boundaries. As they stood up to leave, Elon turned to Maria and smiled. "I think we're onto something really special here," he said. Maria nodded, a sense of excitement building within her. "I think we are." And with that, they stepped into the unknown, ready to create a new kind of music, one that neither technology nor tradition could ever claim as their own. The days that followed their decision to collaborate were a blur of creativity, planning, and countless discussions. The idea that had once seemed far-fetched was quickly becoming a reality. Elon and Maria, once competitors, were now partners in a groundbreaking venture that would merge the worlds of classical music and cutting-edge technology. As they dove into the project, their differences became evident, but it was in those differences that they found strength. Maria approached every musical element with precision, her deep understanding of classical structure and emotion guiding their direction. Elon, with his tech-savvy vision, saw endless possibilities in the intersection of AI, virtual reality, and music. They both had a singular goal: to create an experience that would connect people to music in a way they had never experienced before. The first step was to conceptualize the project. They wanted to create an immersive experience, one that could only be achieved by breaking down the traditional boundaries of live performance. Elon had the resources at SpaceX and Tesla to push the limits of what technology could do, while Maria's network in the classical music world gave them access to world-class musicians who could help bring the music to life. But the real challenge was creating a balance. How could they marry her emotional artistry with his futuristic vision without losing either element? As they brainstormed, Maria found herself coming to terms with the complexity of the project. It was one thing to merge technology with classical music in theory, but quite another to make it work in practice. How would the technology enhance the emotional impact of the music without overshadowing it? How could they create a live performance that felt personal and intimate, even as the audience interacted with it in real time? Elon, however, was brimming with excitement. He had already begun working with his team at Tesla to develop the necessary technology, a set of augmented reality glasses that would allow the audience to engage with the performance directly, altering elements of the music through simple gestures or even thoughts. His dream was to create an experience where every person in the audience could influence the performance in unique ways. With AI at the helm, the music would adapt, evolve, and change based on the audience's reactions. Imagine, Elon said, a concert where every person, through their interactions, is co-creating the music. Each note could be influenced by the mood of the crowd, the movements of their hands, or even their brainwaves. It would be like a conversation between the performer, the technology, and the audience. Maria looked at him with a mixture of awe and skepticism. But isn't that too much? What happens to the purity of the music? Doesn't the artist's intent matter? Isn't the performance something sacred? Elon smiled, understanding her hesitation. I get it. And that's why I think we need to find the balance. We don't want to take away from the emotion of the music, but we want to open up new possibilities, to invite the audience into the creative process. They can still feel the emotion, but they're not just passive spectators. They're part of the performance. Maria took a deep breath. She was used to being in control, to shaping every aspect of her performance to convey exactly what she intended. The idea of surrendering that control to technology, to the audience, no less, was terrifying. But there was something about Elon's vision that intrigued her. She could see how it could take the idea of music as a universal language to a whole new level, where the interaction wasn't just between the performer and the audience, but between everyone in the room, connected through the power of music and technology. We'll have to try it, she said, her voice laced with uncertainty but also curiosity. But we'll do it in a way that keeps the music intact. We have to make sure the heart of the performance doesn't get lost in the tech. Elon nodded. Agreed. Let's make sure the music remains the star. The technology should only enhance it, not distract from it. The next few weeks were spent in a whirlwind of rehearsals, prototype testing, and refining their concept. Maria worked tirelessly with her musicians, trying to adjust to the idea of real-time interaction. She was used to playing solo, where every movement, every note, was meticulously controlled. But now, she had to let go of that sense of control. The musicians, too, were feeling the pressure of the unknown. Would the technology really work the way Elon promised? Would it enhance their playing, or would it be a distraction? As they rehearsed, they were joined by Elon and his team, who helped integrate the augmented reality glasses into the performance. The audience would wear the glasses, and as they moved or even thought, their emotions would translate into changes in the music. The tempo could speed up or slow down, instruments could shift, and entire sections of the orchestra could adapt to the audience's collective mood. Maria had to admit, it was a strange experience. At first, she felt like a performer on the edge of chaos, unsure of how to navigate the unpredictable nature of the show. But gradually, something started to click. She began to feel the connection between herself, the music, the audience, and the technology. The music became a living entity, growing and evolving with each gesture, each change in mood. It was like nothing she had ever experienced before. The night of the first live performance arrived, and with it, an electric atmosphere of anticipation. The concert hall was filled to capacity, every seat taken by people eager to see this new fusion of technology and music. Elon, dressed in a sharp suit, stood at the side of the stage, watching the musicians with a sense of pride. This was his dream coming to life, a performance where art, technology, and humanity came together in a way that had never been done before. Maria, wearing her own set of augmented reality glasses, walked onto the stage with a deep breath. As she looked out at the audience, she felt a nervous excitement. This was more than a performance, this was a leap of faith. The familiar setting of the concert hall now felt different, almost surreal, as the audience donned their glasses and prepared to interact with the music in ways they had never experienced. She took her seat at the piano, and the first notes began to fill the air. The technology hummed quietly in the background, waiting to be activated. The musicians around her began to play, and the audience's reactions, their movements, their emotions, began to shape the music. It was as if the concert hall itself had become a living, breathing organism, pulsing with energy. At first, Maria hesitated, unsure of how to respond to the changes in the music. But as the performance unfolded, she began to sense something new. The music was no longer just her creation, it was a shared experience, a collaboration between the audience, the musicians, and the technology. The emotions in the room ebbed and flowed, influencing the tempo and tone of the piece. It was unpredictable, thrilling, and, above all, deeply emotional. By the time the final note was played, Maria's heart was racing. The audience erupted into applause, but this time, it wasn't just for her. It was for the collective experience they had all shared, the way the music had transformed in real time, the way it had resonated with everyone in the room. As Maria stood, taking in the applause, she realized something. The future of music wasn't about control. It wasn't about perfection. It was about connection. And with that, she knew she had found her new purpose, not just as a musician, but as a creator, someone who could push the boundaries of art in ways she had never imagined. As Elon approached her with a smile, she couldn't help but laugh, a deep, joyful sound. "You were right," she said. "This was something special." Elon smiled back. "I think we just changed the game." And together, they had created something that neither of them could have done alone, a new kind of music that spoke to the heart, mind, and soul. The world of music would never be the same again. The performance that night had been groundbreaking, but it was only the beginning. The world was watching now, and the collaboration between Elon Musk and Maria Villanova became the talk of every major news outlet. Social media exploded with reactions. Some praising the fusion of technology and art, others questioning its authenticity. Still, the performance had sparked a conversation that was larger than either of them had anticipated. Maria found herself at the center of this conversation, her every word scrutinized and analyzed. As much as she enjoyed the thrill of performing, she had never been the type to seek the spotlight. Yet here she was, thrust into it, facing the world's expectations. The pressure mounted as the buzz around their project grew louder. People wanted to know, could this experiment work? Could technology truly enhance art, or would it simply dilute the purity of the creative process? For Maria, the growing attention was both exciting and overwhelming. She had always believed in the power of music to transcend boundaries, but this was something entirely different. This was a challenge to the very foundations of the classical world she had spent her career building. As much as she wanted to believe in the potential of the project, a nagging fear lingered in the back of her mind: would the traditionalists accept what she and Elon were creating? Would she lose her place in the classical music world in the pursuit of something new? Elon, on the other hand, was unbothered by the media storm. He had always been comfortable with controversy. Whether it was launching a car into space or developing brain-computer interfaces, he had never been afraid to push the envelope. The project with Maria was no different. He knew it would take time for people to adjust to the idea of music being shaped by technology, but he was confident that the future of music, like the future of all art forms, was inevitably going to be shaped by innovation. In the weeks following the performance, Elon poured more resources into the project. He knew that the success of their collaboration depended on making the technology seamless, intuitive, and powerful enough to truly enhance the live music experience. He assembled a team of engineers, musicians, and artists to refine the augmented reality system, making it even more interactive and dynamic. It wasn't just about reacting to the audience's movements anymore. They wanted the technology to interpret the emotional resonance of the music itself, creating a truly symbiotic relationship between performer, audience, and AI. Maria, while still deeply involved in the creative process, began to take a step back. She was feeling the weight of her decisions. The responsibility of pushing music in a new direction was not something she had taken lightly. It was one thing to break the mold on her own terms, but it was another to invite the world to witness it. The expectations from both the classical world and the tech world were immense. She spent long hours in her practice room, playing pieces from her past, trying to reconnect with the roots of her artistry. She knew that her collaborations with Elon had opened new doors, but she didn't want to lose herself in the process. She wanted to make sure that, no matter how much technology changed the music, the soul of it would always remain hers. One afternoon, as she sat in her apartment in New York, Maria received a text from Elon that made her pause. "Maria, I've been thinking. We're ready to go bigger. Let's take the show to the next level, a global tour. Imagine the world's best orchestras collaborating with our technology. A new era of live music." Maria stared at the message for a long moment. The idea of a global tour was both exhilarating and daunting. It was one thing to perform a few shows in select cities, but this would be a full-on global venture, with the technology they had developed at its core. The stakes were higher than ever. She took a deep breath and called Elon. "Are we really ready for this?" she asked once he picked up. Elon laughed. "Ready or not, Maria, the world is already waiting. This is our chance to change everything." Maria knew he was right. This was the moment to take the leap, to fully commit to what they had started. But there was a part of her that still hesitated. Could she, and the rest of the world, truly embrace this new era of music? Would audiences, especially those from the more traditional classical circles, accept the blending of technology with what they considered a sacred art form? But as she thought about it more, Maria realized that this was more than just a technological revolution. It was about human connection. It was about bringing people together through the universal language of music, and it didn't matter whether the music was coming from a piano, an orchestra, or a computer. What mattered was that it moved people, that it made them feel something. "Okay," she said finally, her voice firm. "Let's do it." Elon and Maria quickly got to work organizing the logistics for the global tour. The plan was ambitious. They would take their groundbreaking performance to major cities around the world, collaborating with top orchestras and musicians in each location. The performances would be a fusion of traditional and modern, a celebration of the past and the future of music. The augmented reality technology would be refined and tailored to each audience, creating a truly personalized experience every time they took the stage. As the tour dates were announced, anticipation grew. Tickets sold out in minutes, and the buzz around the project reached a fever pitch. Critics were eager to see how this unique collaboration would unfold. Some predicted failure, claiming that technology could never replace the raw emotion of live music. Others saw it as the beginning of a new era, where art and technology coexisted in ways never before imagined. Maria, however, was focused. She had spent months rehearsing, practicing with the orchestra, and preparing herself mentally for what lay ahead. The pressure was intense, but she was no stranger to pressure. She had spent her whole life performing in front of thousands, perfecting every note, every gesture. But this was different. This was something new, something uncharted, and that excitement was enough to push away any lingering doubts. The first performance of the global tour took place in London's Royal Albert Hall, one of the most iconic venues in the world. The audience was a mix of tech enthusiasts, music lovers, and skeptics, all eager to see if Elon and Maria could live up to the hype. As the lights dimmed and the first notes of the orchestra filled the air, the augmented reality glasses were distributed to the audience, who eagerly put them on, ready for the immersive experience. From the first note, the audience was swept away. The music seemed to change before their very eyes, reacting to their movements, their energy. The AI interpreted the collective mood of the crowd, adjusting the tempo, the instruments, and even the lighting. The orchestra, led by Maria, was still the heart of the performance, but the technology added a new layer, one that allowed the audience to engage with the music in a deeply personal way. By the end of the performance, the entire audience was on their feet, clapping and cheering, overwhelmed by the beauty and innovation they had just witnessed. It was clear that this was something new, something transformative. Elon stood at the side of the stage, a satisfied grin on his face as he watched Maria bow to the crowd. He had always believed that technology could change the world, but seeing it change music, seeing it move people in such a profound way, was something he had never imagined. Maria met him backstage, her face glowing with excitement. "This is it," she said, her voice full of awe. "We've done it." Elon nodded. "We've just begun." And as the curtain fell on their first performance, they both knew that the world had changed. Music, technology, and human emotion had come together in a way no one could have predicted, and there was no turning back now. The future of music was unfolding before them, and it was beautiful. The Tokyo Dome shimmered under the late spring night, its structure a blend of futuristic glass and timeless wood. Inside, the air crackled with anticipation. This was the final stop of the global tour, the crescendo of a journey that had redefined what it meant to experience music. But for Maria Villanova, seated quietly at the grand piano backstage, something didn't sit right. She had performed in the world's most prestigious halls. She had stood before presidents and kings. But this was different. Tonight's show wasn't just a concert. It was a reckoning. The tour had been a success by every metric, sold-out shows, viral moments, glowing reviews. Yet Maria couldn't shake the growing unease in her chest. Every night, she saw the same thing, audiences enchanted not just by the music, but by the technology, the lights, the interactive holograms, the AI-driven score alterations. The spectacle had taken center stage. It wasn't the music they applauded. It was the magic trick. Elon Musk joined her in the dressing room, his usual sharp suit slightly rumpled, his eyes full of fire. "We've got a packed house tonight. People are saying this might be the most immersive performance yet." Maria didn't answer immediately. She looked at her reflection in the mirror, hair pinned back, fingers flexing softly on her lap. Then she turned to him. "Elon, are we still doing this for the right reasons?" He blinked. "What do you mean?" She stood, walking slowly to the piano and resting her fingers on the ivory keys. "This started as an idea to bridge art and technology. To create a new kind of emotional experience. But I feel like we're losing the music. People come for the tech. For the interaction. For the spectacle. Not for the feeling. Not for the soul of it." Elon was quiet for a moment. Then, with a rare softness in his voice, he said, "You're not wrong. I've noticed it too. We built something incredible, but maybe we built it too big, too fast." Maria sat at the piano bench, eyes closed. "We need to find the center again. We need to let the music lead." That night, Just minutes before the performance began, Elon made a decision. He walked to the control room and told his engineers, dial the tech back. No holograms. No score shifts. Leave the AR glasses on, but let them only reflect the music, not change it. Tonight, the art leads. The crew was stunned. You're sure? One of them asked. Elon nodded. Backstage, Maria took a deep breath and stepped into the lights. The Tokyo audience sat in silence, waiting. The AR glasses dimmed their view slightly, but they trusted the experience. And then, the first note rang out, a solitary, aching E-flat. No tech-enhanced visuals danced before them. No colors shifted based on their emotions. It was just sound. Just her. And it was breathtaking. Maria played with a rawness she hadn't touched in years. Each note carried weight. Each pause, intention. She wasn't just performing. She was speaking a language older than words, pouring out questions, hopes, grief, and release through her fingertips. The orchestra joined, restrained and reverent. Even the AI sat back, adapting to support the composition rather than manipulate it. The augmented reality became a gentle ripple of soft lights, reflecting the contours of the music, not steering it. As the final movement came, a piece co-written by Maria and Elon, titled Human Resonance, a change occurred in the room. It was as if everyone forgot the tech on their faces, forgot the concept, the novelty. The music took over. Pure and powerful. When the last chord faded, the silence was thunderous. For a full 10 seconds, not a single person moved. And then the applause came. Not the frenzied screams of a tech demo, but a deep, soulful standing ovation. Some people were crying. Others just stood in awe. Maria took a long bow. Behind her, the musicians looked stunned, transformed. She glanced into the wings. Elon stood there, arms crossed, a rare look of genuine emotion softening his face. Later that night, the two of them sat on the rooftop of the concert hall, looking out over Tokyo's glowing skyline. Maria sipped tea. Elon had his usual Diet Coke. I think we found the balance, she said quietly. Elon nodded. You were right. The technology is the canvas, but the music has to be the paint. Maria smiled. We don't need to overwhelm people. We just need to reach them. That's going to be our new philosophy, Elon said. Minimal interference. Maximum connection. Over the next few months, they restructured the project. The tour had proven the power of innovation, but now, they focused on refinement. The next phase of their performances would be smaller, more intimate. Less spectacle, more soul. They began training young musicians to use the technology responsibly, teaching them not just how to operate the systems, but how to let it amplify their humanity, not replace it. They also launched a foundation, Resonance, aimed at democratizing access to immersive musical experiences. Free concerts were held in underserved communities, in hospitals, even in refugee camps. The same cutting-edge tech, stripped of ego, used purely to bring healing and connection. One afternoon, months later, Maria received a letter. It was from an elderly woman in Wisconsin. The handwriting was shaky. I was at your Chicago performance. I've been deaf in one ear for most of my life. But through the AR headset, I felt the music in my bones. I felt something I hadn't felt in 40 years, that I was still alive. Thank you. Maria sat at her piano, the letter in her lap, her fingers trembling. That was the moment she realized, this wasn't just a show. It was a movement. As the sun set over the Tokyo skyline, Maria turned to Elon and asked, did you ever imagine something like this when you first sat at that piano back in New York? He chuckled. Honestly? I was just trying not to embarrass myself. They both laughed. But I did imagine, he added, that maybe we could shake the world. And we did. Not by being loud, but by listening. Maria nodded, her smile peaceful. And by letting music speak for itself. And in that moment, there was no sound, only harmony. The Resonance Foundation was thriving. Across continents, communities previously untouched by orchestral music were now experiencing it, feeling it, with every sense, thanks to the immersive but delicate integration of Elon's AR tech. Hospitals, schools, war-torn regions, all received what Maria had come to call healing frequencies. The foundation had grown into something neither she nor Elon had anticipated, a global grassroots movement. But with influence came scrutiny. It started with a headline. AI composer claims Elon Musk and Maria Villanova used its work without credit. The article originated from a prominent European music journal and quickly spread across international media. It accused the duo of incorporating segments of compositions generated by an experimental AI system, one they had reportedly tested during development, without acknowledgement or licensing. Maria's phone buzzed non-stop. Interviews were cancelled. Invitations were pulled. Just like that, the narrative shifted. Online, people began to wonder, had the emotional performances that moved millions been partly artificial all along? Had the human connection been algorithmic? Elon was in Austin when the news broke. Maria was in Rome, preparing to perform at the Colosseum, an ambitious collaboration meant to bring ancient architecture and modern sound together in a once-in-a-lifetime event. The night before the show, she called Elon. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but frustration. "This can't be how it ends," she said. "All we've built, are we going to let a misunderstanding become our legacy?" Elon was quiet for a beat. Then, with his usual calm defiance, he said, "It won't end. But it might have to transform again." They both knew this wasn't about the technology. It was about trust. They had asked people to believe in a new kind of art, and now the foundation of that belief was cracking. Back in the US, Elon assembled a team of engineers, lawyers, and ethicists. He released a transparent report of every AI model and dataset used during the creation of the AR performance engine. It was complicated but thorough, and it confirmed what Maria had hoped: the AI in question had never directly contributed melodic material to their flagship performances. It had only been used in isolated lab tests. Still, the damage had been done. The court of public opinion had made its judgment. Maria's concert in Rome went ahead, but the crowd was smaller, the energy colder. She performed as if she were trying to reclaim something sacred. And maybe she was. When the final note echoed off the ancient stones, she didn't bow. She simply stood, hands at her sides, letting the silence speak louder than applause ever could. The following week, they hosted a live global Q&A stream titled "The Soul in the Circuit." Maria sat beside Elon in a bare room, no production, no spectacle. Just two people speaking plainly. "We never wanted to replace human artistry," Maria said to the camera. "Technology was always meant to be a bridge, not a crutch. If our vision got misinterpreted, then I take responsibility. I let the lines blur." Elon leaned in. "This isn't about code versus creativity. This is about truth. And the truth is, every major leap in human expression has involved some discomfort. But discomfort doesn't mean deception. It means growth." A silence followed. Thousands watched. Tens of thousands more would replay it over the following days. In that stillness, something shifted. Soon after, a respected group of composers and AI ethicists published an open letter. It cleared Elon and Maria of plagiarism and praised their transparency. Their project, the letter read, remains one of the most sincere efforts to elevate human emotion through digital enhancement. The tide turned. Audiences returned. The media softened. But more than anything, Maria felt the change internally. She no longer performed to prove anything. She performed to reconnect, with herself, with her listeners, with the origin of every note she played. The next phase of the project emerged not from a lab or a stage, but from a hospital in Sao Paulo. A young girl named Anna had been paralyzed in a car accident. Her parents reached out to the Resonance Foundation, hoping the music might bring her peace. Maria flew there personally. She arrived with a stripped-down team, just a string quartet, a piano, and a modified AR system designed to respond to micro-facial movements. Anna couldn't speak. She couldn't blink. But she could hear. And somehow, through subtle changes in her expression, she began to conduct the musicians. For 40 minutes, Maria watched as this little girl, trapped in her body, shaped the tempo, intensity, and harmony of the music being played around her. It was the most extraordinary concert Maria had ever witnessed. When it ended, Anna smiled. A nurse captured a photo of that moment. It went viral, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. Maria later wrote in her journal, "We set out to silence a critic with a piano. Now, the world is listening not because of who we are, but because we've remembered why we started. The art will always matter more than the architecture around it." Elon and Maria met again in Lisbon a month later. No press. No cameras. Just the two of them walking along the river. She smiled at music, Maria said quietly, referring to Anna. With just a smile, she turned it into something new. Not because of the tech. But because of her. Elon looked out over the water. Maybe the real innovation wasn't the tech at all. Maybe it was that we reminded people that their feelings matter. That they can shape beauty without needing to speak. Maria looked at him. And we needed the fall to remember that. He nodded. They didn't make plans that night. They didn't need to. New York City was bracing for rain. The clouds hung low over Manhattan, casting a silver tone over the skyline as if the city itself was holding its breath. Inside Carnegie Hall, history was about to be rewritten. The seats were packed. Critics, fans, skeptics, and world leaders sat shoulder to shoulder. The stage, however, was stripped of grandeur. No massive light rigs. No holographic projection towers. Just a single Steinway piano in the center, and behind it, silence. Maria Villanova stepped onto the stage, wearing a simple black dress. No cameras followed her. No fanfare played. It was the first time in years she'd be playing alone, no orchestra, no tech, no AI, no augmented reality. Just her and the keys. And that was the point. The final concert of the Resonance journey wasn't about proving anything. It wasn't about spectacle. It was about the seed of it all. The power of one person, one instrument, and one audience. Backstage, Elon Musk stood watching on a monitor, his arms folded. Unlike the first time he saw her perform, clueless, out of his depth, uncertain, he now understood the language she spoke. This wasn't a goodbye. It was a reset. A return to truth. Maria placed her hands gently on the keys. Then she looked up and addressed the audience, something she rarely did. When this all began, she said, her voice steady, I was proud, even arrogant. I thought I knew music better than anyone. And then a man with no formal training sat at a piano and reminded me that music is not about perfection. It's about presence. About truth. There were quiet murmurs in the crowd. She continued, we spent years merging art and technology, pushing limits. We built something beautiful, and yes, sometimes controversial. But tonight, I want to remind you of why we create it all. Not to impress. But to connect. Then she began to play. The piece was one she had written just weeks before. It was called The Final Note. There was no recording. No sheet music. It lived only in her memory. It was slow, open, almost hesitant at first, like a conversation finding its way. Then it began to swell, each measure rising with emotion, with restraint, with something close to forgiveness. It wasn't flawless. There were two notes that came too fast. one pedal that sustained too long. But no one in the room cared. The imperfections were human. And the humanity was perfect. As she played, the audience was completely still. No one checked their phones. No one whispered. It was as if time itself paused to listen. By the final phrase, Maria's hands trembled. The melody climbed once more, paused mid-air, then descended, softly, into silence. She lifted her hands. And nothing happened. Not applause. Not movement. Just stillness. Then a sound, a single sob. Then another. And finally, a storm of applause. It was not loud, it was deep. The kind of clapping that comes from the chest, not the hands. A release. A thank you. An acknowledgement. She stood slowly, bowed once, and left the stage. Backstage, she found Elon waiting. His eyes were slightly red. "I didn't know a piano could do that," he said quietly. Maria smiled, tears forming in her own eyes. "Neither did I." They hugged, not as collaborators or co-founders, but as two people who had survived something massive together. In the days that followed, clips of the concert surfaced online. The music, though unreleased, was hummed, interpreted, played on violins and cellos by students who'd memorized it from memory. It became something of a myth. There were no plans to record the final note. Maria refused. "Some things," she told an interviewer, "aren't meant to be replayed. Some things are meant to be lived. And let go." Months later, the Resonance Foundation expanded its mission. Elon stepped back from day-to-day leadership, handing the reins to a diverse board of artists and educators. Maria continued to teach and perform, but rarely gave interviews. They had started a wave. But they didn't need to ride it forever. And then, quietly, a year later to the day of that final concert, Elon Musk released a video titled "For Maria." It was 5 minutes long. No explanation. No branding. Just a simple recording. Elon at a piano. Playing. Not well. But not badly. The melody was familiar, his version of the final note, interpreted clumsily, honestly. At the end, he looked at the camera and smiled awkwardly. "I'm still learning," he said. "But I finally get it." In a world obsessed with speed, spectacle, and algorithms, one story reminded millions that what we truly crave isn't perfection. It's resonance. Vulnerability. A single note played with truth. And sometimes, the most powerful way to change the world is to listen. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?